What's up, you guys? This is the Keeping It Raw podcast. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Do not miss the upload as we give you some of the latest and greatest Detroit Lions content as well as NFL content. And definitely, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about the Detroit Lions, but we're going to talk about a possible scenario. Now, we're not saying that this scenario is going to play out, or we're not saying that the Lions are going to make this deal happen. But if the San Francisco 49ers were willing to part ways with quarterback Trey Lance, would you give up a first-round pick for Trey Lance? Now, Trey Lance has a little experience. He still is kind of a little bit wet behind the ears, or just a little bit. He's a guy that you can sit behind Jared Goff and have a little confidence to know that this guy has had a little experience of playing in the NFL. Now, he did end up getting hurt last season. We all know that. And pretty much by him getting hurt, that allowed Jimmy G to get back out on the field. And then Jimmy G goes down and he gets hurt. So the San Francisco 49ers in last year's draft decided to take a rookie quarterback. Nobody wanted this guy. Nobody was talking about this kid. And all of a sudden, Brock Purdy has made a name for himself. Currently, right now, he has the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs, and he's in the driver's seat. And they got a big game today against the Dallas Cowboys. And I think the 49ers are going to win this game. I just think that Brock Purdy, man, he is playing with all the poise and the confidence that you see in a veteran quarterback. You see Brock Purdy playing with that type of confidence right now. And I just think that is oozing over, man, especially, and you can't go wrong with having a defense like the San Francisco 49ers. They got a really, really good defense over there. So I can see the 49ers winning this game. But definitely, man, Brock Purdy has been balling, and it's going to raise some questions on what the 49ers are going to do. Now, Jimmy G and Trey Lance are starting caliber quarterbacks, and both of these guys could go to another franchise and end up eventually being a starter. Now, Trey Lance's ceiling will be a little bit higher because he's younger. But at the same time, what would you want to do? Now, if you're a Detroit Lion fan, you know, I know that this raises a lot of arguments because most people in Detroit will say we have our quarterback. Jared Goff is the quarterback. We don't need another quarterback. We don't need to draft a quarterback. But you always have to think about the quarterback position because you know why? It's the most important position on the team. And I want to raise the umbrella to be able to say, what if a scenario happened where the Detroit Lions were thinking like, okay, we don't really want to take any of these guys in the draft, but we are interested in Trey Lance. And they decide to part ways with the number 18 in this year's draft, or they part ways with the number 6. Would you, as a fan of the Detroit Lions, be okay with the Lions taking Trey Lance? Now, me personally, I would be okay with it, but some people wouldn't be okay with it. I think that it's nothing wrong with having a younger quarterback, a guy that you can develop behind Jared Goff. The 49ers did it. There's other teams that have done this before, have draft quarterbacks later, and then those quarterbacks eventually, some of them, they end up making a name for themselves. But nobody has done what Brock Purdy has done. Now, Tom Brady was taken in the later rounds, I believe in the 6th round, but nobody has done what Brock Purdy has done by being the last player taken. And the way he's playing out there is going to raise some questions in the offseason. The 49ers are going to get the phone calls from a lot of different teams wanting to know about Brock Purdy, wanting to know about Trey Lance, wanting to know about not even Trey Lance, Jimmy G. There's going to be a lot of phone calls coming to the 49ers to figure out what they're going to do. And I pretty much know that they're going to keep Brock Purdy. They're not going to part ways with this kid. If Brock Purdy happens to take the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl, and not only to the Super Bowl, but wins it, it's a guarantee that Brock Purdy is going to remain the QB1 for the San Francisco 49ers. So if you're the Detroit Lions, you know, do you put a trade proposal out there to say, hey, I'll give up one of my first-round picks for Trey Lance? Me personally, I would do it, but I know a lot of fans don't want to do stuff like this, but this is something that has to raise your eyebrows a little bit. And So if the 49ers were willing to part ways with Trey Lance and they say, hey, give us one of your first round picks, I'll be willing to do it because I feel like Trey Lance is a quarterback that you can develop, a quarterback that will be able to sit back there. You already know that he has a little experience. He doesn't have a lot, but he does have some experience, and that trumps the speculation on quarterbacks in this draft. If you're not, because you're probably not going to get Bryce Young, and you're not going to get C.J. Stroud, guys like that. But maybe, you may can get a Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. I'm not saying that the Lions wouldn't be interested in grooming them because, we know as fans that pretty much everybody wants the Detroit Lions to draft defensive guys with the first two picks. And, rightfully so. And I understand that argument. I would not definitely argue against that because the Lions pretty much were at the bottom defensively. And to be able to grab some juggernauts on defense is something that the Lions definitely need. Now, if you trust Brad Holmes and his capability of hitting on his draft picks later, then you understand that this could be a possible scenario for the Detroit Lions, that they could be willing to give up one of their first round picks to grab a guy like Trey Lance and allow him to be able to sit behind Jared Goff. Now, I'm not saying that the Lions are not going to extend Goff. I'm not saying any of these things. All we're doing is talking speculation. We're just talking draft talk. We're just having a conversation, people. So don't get your draws in a bunch. We're just having a conversation about, would you do this if you were the GM? Because I think that the ceiling with Trey Lance, because he's still young, you could develop him behind Jared Goff. That's something that I would be willing to do. Part ways with one of my first round picks. And because I trust what Brad Holmes knows how to be able to get these defensive guys in the later rounds, i.e. James Houston and Malcolm Rodriguez, for example. So that's already a great indicator that lets me know that Brad Holmes is more than capable of drafting guys in the later rounds and still hitting on these guys. If we would have never played James Houston, we would have never knew that this guy could get to the quarterback like crazy. We wouldn't have never knew that. So the same thing the San Francisco 49ers would have never knew if they drafted Brock Purdy. They would have never knew if Trey Lance was healthy and was still out on the football field. They wouldn't know who Brock Purdy is right now. But unfortunately for Trey Lance, he got hurt. Unfortunately for Jimmy G, he got hurt. And it gave an opportunity to Brock Purdy to be seen. And this kid is playing with poise and confidence that you see in veteran quarterbacks. So if you're a Detroit Lion fan, leave it down in the comments section. Whether you agree or you disagree, would you be willing to part ways with one of your draft picks, being one of your first round picks? You have two in the first round to be able to get a young quarterback like Trey Lance and sit him behind Jared Goff to be developed. I'm not saying that he's going to be the starter. I'm not saying that he's going to outbeat Jared Goff, but sometimes you need, there's nothing wrong with competition. The thing about football is that it's always going to be competition, and you always have to be able to be willing to be able to face competition. And that's something that Detroit has never had. We've never had QB controversy, or we never had another quarterback pushing another quarterback to be great. When Matthew Stafford was in Detroit, Detroit would never take a guy to pretty much compete with Stafford. So Stafford always had the keys, and he never had to worry about anything. And I'm starting to think that we could be complacent and start to think the same thing with Jared Goff, that we are afraid to develop a young quarterback. I'm not saying that quarterback is going to come in and beat out Jared Goff, but he's going to push him to be great. So, all right, guys, make sure you subscribe to Keeping It Raw podcast. I'm out of here. Till next time. Peace.